We are an organization that is a nonprofit organization, and we really are dedicated to empowering and helping women in just that, as Dale mentioned, the electronic payment space. So whether it's a network, whether it's somebody who does processing, any facet really as it pertains to electronic payments, that is really what we target. And we look to do that in a variety of ways. WNET as a whole is a national organization that has various different local chapters that are known as links. The link word stands for Local Interest Networking Circle. And so we are Link New York. We have been very involved here in the New York area in various different events that we put together, typically about 3 to 4 per year, where we can help all sorts of women help to network with each other, provide support, in some cases advice on the job front, advice on the work-home balance thing, advice on networking for your next position, education, just different topics that might be coming up. And so we try to mix it up from time to time with educational type events as well as more fun events. Some of our events that we've had on the fun side have been speed networking. We've done a little bit of a wine and cheese. We'll be doing another fun event later this year around a wine tasting in late November. So for those of you who are interested in finding out more information, if you don't yet, are not yet participating or hearing about our events, please feel free to reach out to any of us here on the panel, and we'll be happy to put you in touch and get you on our mailing list, drop off a business card, and we'll be happy to get you some information on various events that we have. I will say that on a personal note, it's been fantastic. I've made some great friends in the industry who have also become really great personal friends. And so from my perspective, I think it's been a really valuable organization that does a lot of great work. Just for point of record, Deb Baxley is actually my partner in crime in terms of being my co-chair. We've done an exciting amount of things. Deb, I don't know if you want to chat a little bit about the organization and what it does.
Well, I just echo what everybody else said. It's kind of like a little family that we have, so we've gotten to be really close, both, and it's been very helpful from a professional as well as sometimes a personal point of view. And so for the ladies in the audience, if you are interested in joining us after the event closes today, we're going to convene at a local bar, a 7-minute walk from here, for a cash bar and some imbibing and some other networking. And I'd also like to personally thank Marla Ellerman and the organizers of the Mobile Payments Conference today for partnering with us and allowing us to sort of put our panel here at the end of the day and tag our event onto the end of MPC's Day 1. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Deb and Rita. And I guess I'm very grateful that I've had all this experience with the speed networking, because now we're about to have a speed panel. So my first question to the panel, and I'll let Beth head it up, is what are the trends in consumer behavior that are driving mobile payments adoption?
Okay, well, one thing I wanted to kind of level set, can everybody hear? Yes? No? That out? So level set in terms of mobile being cell, tablets, PDAs, handheld games, and the whole world of mobile is really actually more than just necessarily the phone. And then thinking in terms of flip and feature and smartphone and all that associated with it. So in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of how they're interacting with each of these devices and what communication and that is affected by that change where they are interested in interacting from a payment transaction standpoint. So think through in terms of things that are going on. You think in terms of Apple as dominant the iOS system, but in fact there are more Android devices out there in terms of phone. So from decisions about what might be the right kind of interaction and what might be the winner, and it's not necessarily that, well, Apple has a very loyal following, there's more Android devices out there, so from consideration, what's the right solution that comes into play. In terms of kind of trends and behaviors, thinking in terms of global, we were having a little conversation before, and there's other markets outside of the U.S. Where mobile is actually, kind of leapfrog in terms of how consumers are going to interact and affect development and innovation in payments. So things that were going on in sub-Saharan Africa was really advanced in terms of billing and so forth, but China and Brazil and Japan and India, just looking abroad and not necessarily looking insular in terms of your vision about behaviors and interaction with mobile devices when you think about how to affect payments and behaviors.
I echo that. I mean, I think it's interesting when you go to a third world country. My family, for example, is from Guatemala, and you go to very small remote villages where 3 meals a day may be optional, but believe you me, everybody's got a cell phone. So it's a method of not only communication, but in many ways creating financial sort of network independence and a way to communicate with each other, as well as from the financial perspective. So absolutely, it's really depending on market by market, obviously, having a different kind of scenario happening. Deb, I know you've gotten some experiences as it pertains to that as well.
Well, in some ways, the good is the enemy of the better. In our market, our payment infrastructure works so well that probably there will be other applications that may drive mobile payments in our market. Whereas in Kenya, it was a quantum leap in improvement moving to mobile payments, because it even came down to a matter of whether you could be robbed on the highway or not. We heard this morning how people would check in their money on M-Pesa to go from one side of Nairobi to the other just because they didn't feel safe carrying the cash across the town. So that's a quantum difference in people's lives. So far, mobile payments are not making that much difference to us, but I think other things will drive mobile payments adoption in our market.
I think that's a really good point. When you look at places like Brazil, where you don't necessarily want to be carrying things on the bus as far as transit is concerned, and now contactless is taking shape in a few different markets there, hopefully porting over eventually into the mobile market in terms of what that will look like. I think that's absolutely a really good point.
Yeah, and actually, I think a universal truth is the ubiquitous nature of mobile. So probably more in some other countries, but it is always with you. It's basically leaving your house with your phone and your keys at all times, and so the ability to migrate, to discussions about wallet and so forth, the ability to really live your life and your mobile device is really conceptually real, because those are the things that you probably can use it to start your car, open your car eventually, but that is really being able to integrate every aspect within. It's really a mini computer, and so you have a warm glow of it plugged in next to your bedside, and it's the first thing you check in the morning if you haven't woken up several times at night. Insomnia as I have. So that's ubiquitous nature of it. Another component in terms of interaction is still primary interaction on mobile devices is still about texting. So there's still a lot of opportunity, even in just in SMS communication and what that is in terms of offers and incenting mobile payments. But that is, regardless of the type of mobile device, that is still the most common interaction on a mobile device. More than email. Using your mobile device to check your email. Now it's all about texting. People, even except for business purposes, particularly, people are constantly texting each other. And I have, I can speak for my kids alone, is they won't even answer the phone. They if I call them, they respond by text, "What do you want?" Because they're holding multiple conversations and they don't want to be interrupted by being on the phone. It's all about texting. So
Texting in the same house.
it doesn't matter. It could be across the room. That's right.
Very sad, but true.
It is very, very sad. I know in terms of men and women interacting a little differently in terms of the in-store, although 50% of smartphone perspective, using the device to communicate? You know, is this the thing I'm looking at? What do you think? Or, you know, so forth. Where men may be more frequently going to look for information about a product and doing more like research in terms of making decisions. So their interaction around in store is different in terms of moving from how they're using the phone to converting to the transaction is different because their primary interaction on the phone today is a little different.
Well, and I think to that point, when you think about just people using the phone for information, perhaps in the store, and you think about what's going on as it pertains to social networking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look at Pinterest, for example, and you know somebody's got that shot, they've taken a picture, they'd like to get some advice, they throw it on Facebook from there. You know, get a survey in terms of, you know, what do you guys think about this new, you know, Nexus phone, or what do you think about this particular DVD player? Anybody got some thoughts in terms of that?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, being able to get that information and maybe even do a price check in store to do, whether it be scanning a particular UPC or taking a look at information as a comparison and contrast to even pricing at the gap in store versus online could be very different.
Yeah. And you know, we've been hearing a lot too about mobile wallet, and one of the things that's fascinating for me in my writing about technology is just the amazing amount of creativity that's been unleashed with this new technology. We're actually going through a renaissance, and there are a lot of different forms that are coming into play. I heard earlier today, which wasn't the first time, the reference to wallet war. I prefer to think of it as an evolving conversation. But with all of the talk about mobile wallet, and I'm going to ask Rita about this because at MasterCard she's had a lot of direct experience with it, is what are your thoughts regarding existing iterations and some of the new ones that are just being developed?
So, before I start, I know that my MasterCard attorneys will be very happy to hear me say that this is the world according to Rita and not MasterCard. From my perspective, I take a look at what's going on, and perhaps the word mobile wars or wallet wars it is a bit strong, but I would akin it to kind of the Wild West right now. It is a land grab. And so when you think about what's going on from a consumer behavior perspective, you think about each of us as consumers, and where things went and are today versus where they were 3 years ago. Think about yourselves in terms of how you've interacted and what you're doing. Only 3 years ago, 4 years ago, perhaps you were getting that new MacBook, you were getting that new laptop, and lo and behold, 4 or 5 years ago, even, how long ago is it now, Deb? About 5 years ago that the iPhone was invented, right? Not that long ago. And that has literally changed the way we behave. Between the iPhone, Android devices, and then shortly thereafter the iPad, and now all of the flurry of tablet devices, we are changing and have changed the way we interact, the way we get information, the way we shop. And so think about yourselves as consumers today. I did a count in my own household. It's just me and my husband, and no kids. A cat in one place, no cat in the other place. And I counted how many internet-connected devices we have in our home, and the number was 24. Now, granted, I'm a little bit of a geek, but I'm not that much of a geek, okay? Think about yourselves in your own homes. Think about your refrigerator these days has a diagnostics tool. Your washing machine sometimes has some sort of other tool to call different people. You may have an Xbox. You also may have a PlayStation. You may have a DVD player. Your television may be internet connected for Netflix. You've got an iPad. You've got an iPhone. Or an Android device. You've got an iPod. I bet your number is a lot higher than you think it is. And so as a result, with this converged solution, now it's really about point of interaction. It's about where the consumer wants to behave, interact, and transact. And so from my perspective, I think about where things are going. Of course I'm going to want and have different expectations than I did just 4 short years ago. I expect my websites that I'm going to go to be optimized for mobile. I expect the internet and shopping experience on my iPhone to be rich. I don't want to re-enter my street address because lovely iPhone autofill has taken place and now has changed my street address from one name to another. So abandonment happens, right? I get frustrated with my touchpad devices. And so therein lies the rub, if you will, around the mobile wallet and what that is. And so before we really think about mobile wallet and all of those pieces, I think it's really important, at least from my perspective, to define what mobile wallet is. I view mobile wallet as the ability to have a container, or as I lovingly call it, a filing cabinet, where I can put a lot of different things. If you look at my physical wallet today, it looks like the size of a small child. It is huge. And it's because I have coupons and loyalty cards, although I do have the Keyring app now, so I'm getting rid of my loyalty cards. I've got my other cards in there. I've got, you know, all sorts of pieces of information that probably I'll never use, but I have it in there in case I need it. I want that same ability for my wallet. I also want the ability to be able to go and take my loyalty card, take my frequent flyer number, have a coupon, download pieces of other information. You know, today, think about being able to have a movie theater ticket in my phone, and the trailer if I want to download it, and I can be able to send it out on Facebook, hit like, do whatever I want to be able to make my life a whole lot easier. To me, that is the definition of what a mobile wallet is and should be, particularly as we talk about point of interaction and converged solution. In terms of the types of wallets, you know, I think Deb, you know, perhaps will touch upon some things as well, because I know we've been in the same space for quite some time. I think about three sort of categories. One is around what's called barcode. Another one is around a cloud type technology where a wallet may exist. And the third is around NFC and what those three are and what the differences are. Each to me has strengths and weaknesses. When I think about barcode, you know, I think it's been a very easy and successful scenario. It's worked brilliantly in places like Starbucks, but not, at least from my consumer experience, perhaps, hopefully no one's from Dunkin' Donuts that's here in the room, I don't think in going to 10 to 12 different Dunkin' Donuts that the experience has been the same as going to a Starbucks, because you've got the human factor. You've got a sales associate where turnover is potentially high in an area. You've got a person as a consumer who may not necessarily be very savvy at knowing what to do and how to do it. So you've got some pluses and minuses as it pertains to barcode. Then you move to cloud. Oh, and by the way, you think about barcode also in the scenario of safety and security. Is it safe? Is the information that I'm sending back and forth potentially safe? And the same thing goes with cloud. Is it safe? Are those mechanisms there? Again, the cloud is really great, but perhaps now you've got to worry about internet connectivity. And what happens if you've got bad internet or bad cell phone coverage in a particular place? In a store where there's maybe a lot of metal and things aren't so great. That said, I think cloud's got some flexibility and some low dependence, both of those two technologies, on mobile network operator. You know, there's no secure element to necessarily worry about. And you've got not necessarily dependence on handset manufacturers. And the last but not least technology, and I don't know how we're doing on time, Dale, so please let me know, I would say is around near-field communications. My personal favorite, not only having been at MasterCard, but prior to MasterCard, spent a lot of time helping to move the industry in terms of NFC. I mean, I think it's a standard-based technology, unlike the other two currently, again, as it exists today. Things can change very easily and quickly. It, you know, has the benefit of having dynamic authentication. So again, it doesn't matter if you're sniffing the data, it's dynamic, so you can't necessarily replay it. There are a lot of different use cases for NFC. It's not necessarily just about payment. It is a protocol in terms of communication, which, you know, Deb will likely talk about later on. And, you know, but the weakness is there are some dependencies. Mobile network operators, secure element, you know, who's going to do what. You know, the trusted service managers, a lot of different ecosystem players to stand that up. So from my perspective, Dale, I think there are a lot of different technologies out there. I still, as a personal, not as a MasterCard perspective, feel very bullish on NFC if all of the players can come together. we'll see what happens with, you know, MCX in terms of, you know, what their perspective is, and, you know, and other wallet type players in the marketplace and the ecosystem. I think there are a lot of things going on right now. It is the Wild West. So.
I agree with you. Thank you. And, you know, I also heard today some talk about a holistic approach.
Your mic is out.
Oh, okay.
Come on over here, Dale.
All right.
Anyway, today we were talking about, and a few different presenters brought up the idea of taking a holistic approach to the whole mobile wallet, and not looking at it as simply one thing. And I could say the same thing for NFC. It's an incredibly robust technology, and it just occurred to me several times throughout the day that we're really underutilizing NFC as a technology. For example, I'll just give you one because, you know, time is short, but take, for example, an NFC application launcher that you can affix in a little label that you can put to your door. And maybe you're transitioning out of your house and you want to change the settings on your smartphone. And you simply tap that smartphone to the label, and it will immediately reset your Bluetooth so that you can use your hands-free Bluetooth while you're traveling in your car. And that's an NFC application launcher. It's not rocket science. It's available today. And I think that if we find different ways to incorporate it and embed it into our day-to-day routine, that will gradually move the needle on NFC acceptance at the payments. So anyway, that's my take on NFC. But I do have one final question, and I will direct this to Deborah. Looking at, you know, the 50,000-foot view of these technologies, do you think that cloud or NFC will prevail?
That seems like it's been the burning question of today, because we've had several speakers who are very bullish on NFC and then some who are not so much. And I put a lot of thought into this particular question. In fact, I addressed a group in France a couple of weeks ago, the NFC World Congress, on this topic. And my definition is a little bit different from yours. So this question really only applies to proximity payments, because obviously NFC doesn't really work for like parking or P2P or, you know, submitting money for charitable contributions or things like that. So when you're thinking about proximity at the point of sale, my definition for the NFC is a wallet where the credentials for the payment are stored in the secure element of the phone, and the interaction is between the phone and the POS. A cloud-based solution is using any kind of authentication technology. It could even be NFC, but the payment credentials are in a host solution somewhere. The other authentication technology could be barcode. It could be with a very innovative solution that Square came out with, Pay with Square. It's also sometimes called Square Case. It's nothing to do with the payment acceptance device, the dongle, but it's the solution where it uses geofencing, recognizes that you're in the coffee shop, and your picture pops up on the point of sale device, which is an iPad. So in that case, the photograph of you is the authentication. So that's the cloud-based wallet versus the NFC wallet. Now, I have a prediction on which will prevail, but I'd like to say a few things about NFC first. As Dale was just mentioning, there are a million other things that NFC can do. I would sort of liken it to when cameras first came out on the cell phones. You know, probably the initial reaction was, oh, that's nice, what am I going to do with this? And then all of a sudden, there's this explosion of applications for like the check capture and scanning business cards and everything, things that we never would have imagined. So the whole innovation among the developer community was unleashed. And I think it similarly will happen with NFC. But the applications that we're kind of envisioning for NFC, some of them are very cool, much cooler than payments are. So it's things like gaming and gambling and tying your Angry Birds game from real life, where you can I mean, there's one game where the premise of the game is some evil warlord has taken people and turned them into cartoon characters in the physical world. And the point of the game is to pull them back into the virtual world. And one way to do that is to use NFC to tag these plush toys that you bought at Toys R Us, and it pulls them back into the virtual world so they can help you with the battle of the overlord. So I mean, just think of what you could do with gaming, and that's really cool. Access, starting your car, some of the applications for ticketing. So all of this is cool, and people who've used NFC say it does seem like magic in a way. It's a lot more magical than barcodes, I'm sorry. So, yeah. So the pros and cons of the two different solutions, cloud versus NFC, are kind of like mirror images of each other. So NFC, we expect a proliferation of devices. You see all the forecasts, they're gonna be out there. It ties in perfectly with EMV. You've got the weight of the really biggest industry players, MasterCard, Visa, and ISIS, Google to a certain extent. It's bulletproof security. Cloud could be, but it's not standards-based, so it takes some more work to make sure that it's really secure. And it's cool. Now the cons of the NFC is the business model complexity is seemingly overwhelming at this point. And even though there's a promise of devices, there aren't very many yet. There's a lot of launching pains right now, as we've seen with Google and ISIS. Pricing barriers, there's some problems with using card not present rates at point of sale. And in some cases, from the banks, a lack of a business case. So those are relatively major, barriers. But having said all that, I would say that if you scan the market and you look, you've got MasterCard and Visa, well, they both have cloud-based wallets too. So kind of NFC and then straddling in the middle. But people who are definitely on the side of cloud are Starbucks, MCX, we expect that's the merchant customer exchange. I mean, we don't know exactly what they're going to be doing, but we can surmise it's going to be cloud-based solution. Amazon and iTunes, so they're kind of on the cloud side. Now, having said that, if you scan the market and you think about EMV rollout, what I would predict is the demise of barcodes in the near future. I knew it was just sort of a bridge technology. I would see the demise of, dongles and little tags and things like that. And say for the long term that magstripe will have a very long, slow decline, kind of like checks. It's taken 100 years, but hopefully it won't be that long.
My mom still writes them. So.
Yeah. So we'll have a long, slow decline of magstripe. And I think that NFC wallets and cloud-based wallets will coexist for the foreseeable future. I don't think one is going to win out over the other. As you can see from Starbucks, that particular cloud-based wallet was pretty attractive. May not work in all venues, but there is so much emphasis and weight, the entire industry behind NFC. I can't really see that, not going anywhere. So I think it's going to be both. So my answer is both.
How's that for riding the fence?
Well, I'm a consultant. So.
Thank you, Deb. And how are we doing on time? Do we still have? Do we have time for one question? Okay, we have 5 minutes, so let's open it up. Please feel free to weigh in. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Come on, guys. Here we go.
Hi. So a lot of today discussed NFC for proximity payments, but what about other part of the universe, all the online payments, and how do you see NFC if that's going to be the winner playing out on the online world?
Very interested in, because I would say, because there's, NFC is not able necessarily to facilitate
Payments everywhere, right? And so, that would be, my sort of additional commentary on it. Point of sale solution may include NFC. So that's not like you necessarily want to know a lot of reasons why it's potential, but it does have a limitation that includes the fact that it cannot solve transactions universally in all different types of scenarios. There are other solutions that may be more ubiquitous in terms of their experience. And so that's a consideration in terms of making decisions from a mobile strategy for payments, in terms of how you are predominantly consumers are using, the mobile device to browse, and they may make a purchase online instead of in store, and what does that have to, where's the NFC component to that versus other solutions? And just thinking in terms of what's the right strategy has to do with what are the different ways that you transact with your clients and your customers, and so what is the long-term, the appropriate solution that's going to hit all those channels, not necessarily require proximity.
And again, I think the word of the day here is convergence, right? So when you think about online and you think about in-store or in-person, there we go. All right. Okay. When you think about those things, I think there is a certain amount of use cases that could potentially have some benefit as far as using, for example, NFC online. So an example of that might be, for example, we at MasterCard have struck a partnership with Intel. Intel is now, Intel Inside, right? It's all in all of the laptops and smartphones and tablets, and they're working in all of those areas. Well, imagine, if you will, being able to take that Intel chip and have NFC capability together so that you could actually have a panel that could be used as an NFC reader in a laptop or an Ultrabook or something along those lines. That is something that Intel and MasterCard, for example, are working on. It's publicly announced, so I can certainly talk about it. So laptop, tablet, have that little reader at the corner. Now all of a sudden I tap my NFC phone or my card or my fob or my tag, and whatever device it is that I'm choosing, now I have the ability to potentially have a card-present transaction utilizing NFC for an e-commerce scenario. So that's an example of potentially using, kind of combining the two, if you will.